Welcome to the International Mentoring Community, all things Mentoring Lounge, where we have conversations. We dig into the concepts and practices of mentoring, mentorship, mentor, and mentee. And we answer questions whenever we can, and if people send them in, we'll make sure that we get to them on the broadcast. Today is actually one where some people have asked us about it a couple of times, but it's also we're sharing a little bit from the sense of what are the important action outcomes associated with mentoring. And we'll get to that a little bit more here in a second. But Doug, you want to just introduce yourself? Doug and I are your co-hosts for today. So Doug, you want to just share a little bit?
Yeah, and my name is Doug Lawrence, and I am a co-founder of the International Mentoring Community. I have my own business, Talent C, which is all things mentoring, and the role that I play with the International Mentoring Community is I'm the Director of Practice and Outreach.
Great. And Dr. Stephen Hobbs, I am the Director of Education and Certification. I have my own company, Wealth Movement, WELLTH, whereas Doug has a deep practice into the world of mentoring. Mine is more about helping people understand about mentoring and to go through the certification process. So I don't necessarily have as deep of a practice as what Doug does. I do have some people I interact with through the mentoring lounge and the mentoring lens, right? So we can pull from that at any given time. But when Doug and I get into this, we want to make sure that we are clear about what we're going to be covering. And today we're going to take a look at some definitions of mentor and mentoring, and to be able to connect it to the 11 qualities, yes, 11 qualities that's required of a mentor when mentoring. Now, these 11 that we're bringing forward, you can go to Google and you might get someone write about 3. Someone might write about 7. Someone might have a list of 21. The ones that we're sharing with you are what Doug and I, after considerable conversations over time, thought would be the sort of base, foundation, seedbed of mentoring that would encourage someone to get that basic level understanding, and then they could expand into other kinds of qualities as they see that fit with themselves and with the mentees that they're interacting with. Now, once we're done these qualities, and we're not going to spend like a long time in them, we want to open up a little bit more of a conversation around a number of words starting with the letter C. And I'll just share with you things like character and capabilities and capacity. And there's more that we'll go into as they align themselves with the story that we're sharing about the qualities of the mentor while mentoring. So again, encourage, if you have questions, certainly send them in. And we'll add them, we'll take note, and we'll see what we can do to get this to unfold in a sort of a fun conversational style. How's that sound, Doug?
Sounds good.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is take a look at the word mentor and then mentoring. And to start off with, I'll offer a little bit of insight about mentor, and then I'll ask Doug to put in his 2 toonies worth. And so let's just take a look at it from this perspective. Mentors actually has 2 uses. One is the name of a educating approach, the person, but it's also the educating approach that you're actually going to use. So when you mentor, you mentor. And when you mentor, you are a mentor kind of idea. And the mentor is someone who is interacting with the mentee, and they're doing so in a way that helps the mentee to evolve their understanding of topics, or for whatever reason that together, and the mentor has lived experience that the mentee can tap into. Now, there's other characteristics that go with that that will cover off underneath the banner of mentoring, which is sort of like the process or action thereof. But there is the story that we want to bring forward. Sometimes people talk about what makes a good mentor, what makes a great mentor, what makes an extraordinary mentor, remarkable, memorable, like whatever adjectives that you might put in front of mentor. We'll explore those just a little bit more, but from a broad sweep perspective, anything you want to add, Doug, about mentor as a person, mentor as a process?
The one thing that, and it's tied to the definition of mentoring. And when you go to unpack that, you actually can see the bits and pieces that we need to have in order to be able to make that person that mentor. So, and I'll give you an example. I don't want to jump ahead, but I'll give you an example is that a mentor is an individual that is involved in a relationship based on trust and it being a collaborative, reciprocal relationship.
And so those will actually get into even some of the qualities that are associated with it. But there is a little bit more to it than just walking in and saying, well, yeah, I got some lived experience. I think I got to answer some questions. There's a bit more to this notion of what is a mentor. And why don't we just go through this notion of good, great, extraordinary. Do you want to share your thoughts about that? Because people often ask you, because we've had these kind of conversations about what's a good, what's a great, what's an extraordinary mentor.
Yeah, from the aspect of good is that's, from my perspective, that's somebody that is mentoring today and it is not involved in the practice of mentoring, but has taken some interest, may volunteer to mentor in a nonprofit organization. It may involved in mentoring in their own organization as well. So somebody says, boy, I'll bet you that person could use mentoring, and somebody goes, well, I think I can do that. So that would potentially could be a good mentor. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of like it's the entry into this world of serving as a mentor. I think the point that you're going to get to, I think, is going to help the those who are listening in and watching to get that fine line that I think we're attempting to get at.
So that was the good, and now the next step is the great, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So somebody who is a great mentor is somebody who you would want to have working with you as your mentor. So that's definitely from a simplistic perspective, that's basically what it is. It's also somebody who periodically engages in continuous learning. It's also somebody that is involved in professional development as a mentor. So they do research, they do all sorts of different things like that in order to be in a better position, have a deeper understanding of the mentoring process and concepts.
So the distinction we're attempting to make here is this notion of a good mentor is sometimes it's assigned to you, right? Or you're having a bit of a conversation, you say, well, maybe can I ask you a couple of questions? It's sort of very, very more informal kind of ideas. We move into great. This is where the mentee is really getting to think about, is this person a great mentor for me? And being able to take a look at that. But this notion of extraordinary is where we're attempting persons who are going to serve as mentor to get to because of this notion of certification, which means that there's a deeper reflection that the mentor is undertaking to be able to go, well, I'm just not ordinary. I think I've got some extraordinary ways of being able to interact. And one in particular for me is when you listen, you learn, where you share, you educate. And the deep richness of that phrasing while serving as a mentor helps to distinguish you as an extraordinary mentor. So that's what I would add. Doug, your thoughts?
No, I would agree with that. And the aspect of the extraordinary, there's, obviously you spend more time on your professional development and fine tuning the process and concepts. And here's the one thing that I find that a lot of people aren't willing to commit to. And if that's the case, they probably would never rise to the extraordinary. But that's the aspect of being able to lost my train of thought. To be able to, as an extraordinary mentor, you're going to be able to take all your lived experiences and to be able to share those with that individual. And it's making it a relatable experience that people can relate to. Like if you're working with somebody and I had an individual one time that I did all the talking for 45 to 50 minutes. And at the end of the mentoring session, I asked the question, you didn't say anything this entire time. What was the value you got from the mentoring, from our conversation or my conversation? And the answer I got back was that, number one, it increases my self-worth, my self-esteem, my self-confidence. It increases all of that. And I actually see myself in some of the lived experiences that you have shared with me. So it was kind of a win-win for everybody. And that is an example of what an extraordinary mentoring experience can be like.
For sure. And to be able to go through the certification process, this confirmation, and doing it with your peers is also a great way to be able to, I'll use the word anchor, this notion of what are the key concepts and practices that you are continually updating, upgrading, up-leveling, upskilling, right, that you're continuing to do. Because you're aware, and this is what I think really makes an extraordinary, is that you're aware, is that if I'm interacting with mentee A, it doesn't mean I'm going to use that same approach with mentee B. And you're able to, in a sense, fly, right, with things up your sleeve that you can just go, okay, I can pull this out, I can interact with this. And that comes from that sense of that deeper practice. And that's what we're attempting to get to with the international mentoring community, is get you to that level where you truly have a deep, rich appreciation of what it means to serve as a mentor. You've got the concepts and practices of mentoring, which I think is a great segue, Doug, into, I think it might be helpful at this point just to define mentoring. It's putting the ing onto mentor, talking about the process that we use at IMC.
Yep, most definitely. So mentoring is a two-way trusted relationship where the mentor and mentee learn and grow together through personal and professional development.
You want to break it down a little bit just to help people who may be hearing this for the first time from us?
Well, and from an extraordinary mentor perspective, the words that jump out at me and make me want to obviously do more research and figure out some more is the trusted relationship part, and the fact that it is a two-way collaborative reciprocal relationship. And then we talk about where the mentor and the mentee learn and grow together, which by definition is sort of defeats some of the other definitions that are out there, such as reverse mentoring. So when we learn and grow together, there are a huge amount of win-wins for everybody that's involved in that growth. And you're doing it through personal and professional development. And the key part here is that we're focusing on the personal development first before we get into the professional. And a large part of that will play out for those of you that are thinking of being an extraordinary mentor, but also thinking of maybe being part of the support structure for mental health. And if that's the case, then you definitely want to address the personal development first.
And that's why we're having this broadcast today to look at these 11 qualities of an extraordinary mentor. You could say they're the 11 qualities of a mentor, the extraordinary, as you deepen and enrich these understandings and bringing it out. But someone asked me the other day, they said, well, why are these 11 qualities important? And I said, do you mean these 11, or do you mean 3 that you might have, or 5 that you read from someone else? And they said, no, just in a broad sense, why are these qualities important? And I came up with 3 responses, and that's what I'd like to just share. The first one is that these qualities are like guidelines for you. They give you the guide rails of your path as you're walking, or the handheld rails if you're walking along maybe a swinging bridge, if you want to use that metaphor. These are the guide rails that help you. And if they're not there, sometimes you might find yourself, I think I might fall off this swinging bridge, okay? Or I may sort of stumble and fall a little bit here because I don't have them as my guidelines. But at the same time, they're actually like a checklist, all right? So if we go a little bit more tactical, you might look at it, and that's why when you go through the certification process, yes, these are guidelines, but they're also checklists. Yes, I know how to do this. Yes, I know how to do this. Yes, I know how to do this. Because if you find yourself with a no, then that means there's some education you got to get into, whether to get the concepts behind it or to develop the skills. And that's why they're there as well. But also, I believe that it offers clarity. And the clarity from the consistency is that if these are the consistent guidelines and checklists that you can work with, then you have something to lean into from a clarity point of view, that if you find yourself stumbling with your mentee, you can think back, okay, hang on a minute, am I managing this? Can I discuss these qualities? And maybe there's something that I've got to share with the mentee that'll help me to help them. And therefore, this notion of guides, checklists, clarity is something that you can use to, I use the word leverage. It's love over time, or it's a variation of leverage. Leverage these guides, checklists, clarity, these 11 qualities. So I just wanted to share that because someone asked. I thought that I would just share my response to that question. So I think what I'll do is we'll move into the 11 qualities that we're using as a seedbed foundation for the certification process with the International Mentoring Community. Again, we're not going to go into these in depth. We've shot other videos that we would go more in depth with each one of these, but we want to go through them and just to highlight them, but eventually get into those C-related words at the end that help to put a bow around the gift, okay? To be able to just give you another sense of how these all come together. So there are, excuse me, 9 of them that start with the action verb manage, and 2 of them have discuss. And this is particularly important for the profile that we're working with. Manage means is that you're able to define and to list the meaning, to identify what are the characteristics of these qualities, get to the point where, yes, I can demonstrate them. But manage is getting all of that and saying, over time, you continue to do them. You don't just, well, I'll just use this one once and don't worry about it after. No, these are qualities that you manage over time. You put the effort into it. You may have to spend a little bit of money to learn more about it, maybe take a workshop, these kind of things. So the manage confidence. I'm just going to go through the 9: confidence, commitment, confidentiality, presence, rapport, the ethical values that you interact with, like trust, reciprocation, tolerance, and flexibility. So each one of those, we could spend a video on each one and go through, define them. What are the characteristics that go with them? Which ones help? Which ones hinder? What are examples that we might see in the world or in our own lives that demonstrate how these different qualities unfold? So in the show more notes, what we've done is we put a key phrase that goes with each of these qualities so that you have something to work with. Also, if you go through all the different videos on our YouTube channel, the International Mentoring Community, you can see a reference to a lot more of these, and you can certainly go into them. So the idea is to get to the point that the manage is that, in a sense, you are embodying these 9 qualities and what it is that you do as you serve as a mentor and in your mentoring process. So I just wanted to make mention of that. I don't think we need to go into them in great detail. I'm just going to say them again. So manage confidence, commitment, confidentiality, presence, rapport. There's 7 ethical values that you would go into: reciprocation, tolerance, and flexibility. Those are what you're going to manage. Is there anything you want to add about any of those or the word manage from a deep practice point of view before I go into the other 2, Doug?
The one that jumps out for me is the confidentiality part, especially in light of the mental health work that we're doing. And so there's, keeping what we've learned private unless agreement is given to share. That's so true. And, it's everybody that I work with, I always ask for permission to share if it's relevant. I ask for permission to share their experiences in order that it may help someone else.
For sure. And the key element here as well is that as a mentor working with your mentee, how can you encourage these same qualities in the mentee as they contribute into the connection and the arrangement? We sometimes forget about that, and we're just, oh, these are things I need to do. Now, hang on a minute. Remember, mentoring is a 2-way trusted relationship, an arrangement. How can you encourage these same qualities in the mentee? Because when you do that, that deepens and enriches you as a mentor. Because there's a phrase, and I'm paraphrasing, I learned this years ago, it went something like, you educate what you love to learn. If you're wanting to learn about commitment, then educate others about it, and that deepens and enriches you. And again, you can do it with each of these qualities. So the other 2 that I wanted to make mention of, we go to the point of the action verb of discuss. And the reason being is that we don't have a way in which to say, this is how you must do this. But we encourage you to discuss it when you interact with us, especially from a certification point of view, so we can get a sense of, do you understand the concepts that are here? Not that you have to inform us about the practice of how you go about doing it. So let me give you a sense here. It's discuss the use of humor and discuss the mentor's behavior that's congruent to the ethical standards that have been set up in the mentoring arrangement. So let me just go in and just take a look at that. There's the notion of humor, and there are different styles of humor. I'm not a comic by any means when it comes to being in the mentoring arrangement. But I tend to lean into stories that can be funny, or I might use a little bit of physical humor. And I might do I might do a head turn that might go, "What'd you just say?" And a person might smile because they see my head turn and go, what, hang on, where are we going with this, right? And have a little laugh to go with it, rather than attempting to tell a joke in there to maybe bring out an idea. But each person, each mentor has a different way in which to bring humor in. I would also caution, though, is be really alert in the use of sarcasm, even about yourself, right? Don't put yourself down. Don't put the mentee down. Just really pay attention to that. Now, I might use a funny story, like the reason that I'm losing my hair is that I'm 6'7" and I keep hitting my head in the doorway, right? And if someone meets me and we're having a walk and I say that, then we get a bit of a hoot and a snicker, these kind of things. But that's about as far as I would go in terms of this notion of humor. That's why we ask you, discuss your use of humor as a quality of who you are. Because we're not saying, take humor out, be robotic in your mentoring arrangement. That's not what it's about. Thoughts about humor and discussing humor, Doug?
I've always been a proponent that if humor doesn't work for you, just don't try and force it. And I'm the same. I can tell a story that'll have overtures of humor and that in it, and that seems to work. But to actually like telling jokes, I can never remember punchlines, and if I do, I get them backwards, where I'll tell the punchline at the beginning, and it doesn't work. So why bother?
Yeah. And if you just listen and go back about 20 seconds and listen to that, that's a use of humor that can bring out a way in which to do things, be things, have things that you may want to take a look at. Oh, okay, I could see that use of humor. So thanks for that. The other one is this notion of discuss the mentor's behavior congruent to the ethical standards in the mentoring arrangement. One of the things that we encourage from the notion of manage the ethical values are what ethical values, what inspired standards are you going to use in the mentoring arrangement? Now, you might say, well, I'll just use all of the ethical value. Great. But guess what? Sometimes one or two of them might come to the surface flicking like a neon sign at a diner that says, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, right? And let me give you an example of it. Two of those ethical values are respect and fairness. And for years and years, whenever I got into some conversations with people and I felt as though I might have been put down, I felt it. I was thinking, well, right, you're not being fair with me, right? And it was based on sometimes I lean into my academic experience. I have a strong academic experience, and I'm not doing it to belittle anyone or anything like that, but it's just where I go to help explain things. And I might use, a $10 word when a $1 word is there, but I help to explain it, right? And to open it up from there. But when I start getting people, would say things like, well, you're being too academic right now. I would find that from a fairness point of view, and I'd have to shake a little bit. But when I started to unpack it, I started to realize it was a respect. What I was actually feeling was a lack of respect. I'm bringing who I am, right, to what it is that I'm discussing. I'm not saying, look at me, I'm better than anyone else because of my academic background. I'm bringing it because it's part of my lived experience. So when people start to say that to me, I would go, okay, can I just understand what's going on? Can you help me understand what you meant by that term? Because maybe I'm not giving the $1 word for the $10 words. I may have forgotten to do some of that. And therefore, I want to make sure that we are respecting each other, because I want to respect the mentee as well, in terms of being able to listen to them and catch what it is that they're saying. But I also have to deliver it in such a way is that there is this answering of the questions and the evolvement of the mentee, right? And I don't want to put anything in the path to muck things up. So that's the one around the notion of discuss the mentor's behavior congruent with the ethical standards, what you decide in the mentoring arrangement. And another word that based on your agreement, then make sure that your behavior is congruent to those. Any thoughts that you have about that, or even a story you want to share, Doug?
No, not really. You covered everything off that I was kind of thinking at the same time. So, no.
Okay. Again, to discuss this humor, discuss the mentor's behavior with the standards. How can you also get that happening with your mentee to you as mentor? Because sometimes people might use their humor and they use it as a mentee to put up a little bit of a mask and sort of like, I'm a really good person, but in behind, to Doug's point, I'm screaming, this happens not correct in my life, right? And they may be using humor to mask that. And so you just have to get them to go, well, hang on a minute. No, actually, there's something I need to talk about. I'm not going to laugh at myself here and put myself down. I need to open up a conversation here with you, right? And the standards that we agree to, I need to know as a mentee, am I living up to those as well? And sometimes I may have to, as a mentee, ask the mentor, how are we doing? Can I just ask you how we're doing, right? And that might be a question that you ask, okay? So where I think we'd like to land, if we were to use the land this plane, to land this insight, there's some C-related words that we wanted to bring to the foreground about these qualities of an extraordinary mentor. And where I'd like to go is, those words are character and capabilities, competence, conditions and consequences, continuance, and capacity. So we're just going to look at them in groupings here. So the character and capabilities is that's what each of you bring. You bring your character, who you are, your lived experience, and your capabilities, your talents, and what you already know, your lived experience that you bring. And celebrate that fact that you are a character, okay? You have these capabilities, all right? And you don't have to necessarily hide them. I get it. When you first get your arrangement and your connection started up, you sometimes don't put everything out on the table right away. But at the same time, how can you get to a point of being fully human and being natural in your exchange about what's going on? And these qualities help to bring that sense of your character and your capabilities and bring it to the table so that you can share that. All right. Again, I'm always just going to ask Doug if there's anything he wants to add. I'll just do a quiet little stop. And if he adds something, we go. If not, I'll just go to the next one. So the competence aspect of this is that you have a certain level of competence. You may have competence, right? Or you can confirm your knowledge, or you have competence, or you can confirm your practice. In our world of the certification, we talk about the certificate of practice. In other words, you have the concept and the practices. And what we can do is that we can confirm those. That leans into the fact that you are walking along the path of competence. But again, this notion of managing your use of your qualities over time takes this time. So we can't just sort of say, oh, we met you, you've gone through your certification, we'll anoint you competent, off you go. No, what we can do is confirm that you've got the concepts and practices, and as you go through the recertification, we might start using words more like, well, you seem to be really competent in that, and we can bring that word out and lean more into the ISO world, the International Standards Organization, where they talk about conformity assessment, or what we would use a word like competence verification. But right now, we're just going to confirm your practice against these action outcomes, and they are important. That's why these 11 qualities are there. Are you gaining your competence? Are you gaining the concepts and practices? The next thing that we take a look at in combination are the conditions and the consequences. Now, Doug, because of a deep practice perspective, he interacts with people across many industries, all right? And he is interacting with lots of different mental health related issues. I tend to work more with people who are nature aware. And what they're doing is they're saying, well, how am I inspired by nature? Or how am I using nature to inform my work? Or of the work that I do, how am I improving, focusing, and strengthening through technology, nature interaction? So I have more of a nature awareness story that unfolds for me. And therefore, the conditions and the consequences in the use of these qualities might vary a little bit than how I might deal if I'm dealing with someone who might be coming from a mental health point of view and they need some support. There are commonalities, granted, okay, because even some people who are nature aware, they may actually have some mental health issues. And to Doug's point, how do we help personally to get to the professional use of it? They're there. So I'm not saying that what I do or what Doug does, one is better than him. That's not what I'm attempting to get to here. Is just recognizing that there are conditions and consequences that you move into. And guess what? The next time you meet, let's say you meet on a Tuesday, or the following Tuesday, your mentee comes, and the conditions and the consequences of your conversation, you might go, this doesn't seem to sort of flow from what we were talking about last time, but they're more important now, and therefore you've got to deal with the conditions and the consequences that go with that. The next thing that you're looking at is the notion of continuance. Doug mentioned this, the continuing learning, continuing improving, all right, continuing focusing, continuing strengthening, the words that you would like to use here. The continuance of practice, or practice continuance, is so important. Sometimes people we talk to when we say, as a mentor, have you been doing reflecting as you've been concreting your portfolio and getting your logbook? And we've had people say, oh, shoot, I haven't been finished. I just haven't been doing my logbook. And we're going, do you think you may not be doing your reflection, so you don't have a continuous of practice continuous? And you can just sort of see them go, oh, right. Yeah. No, I've got to do something here. I got to get back into that logbook, but I got to get into it from a continuance. And Doug is really, there's a strong element of statement that Doug would use when it comes to logbook. You want to share?
Yeah, the big, most important thing with a logbook is you need to start that today and capture all of your mentoring experiences, the lived experiences in that mentoring log, because it's going to become extremely important for you when you go through the verification process. Because you're at your fingertips, because you've got it all in your log at your fingertips. You'll have, if you're asked the question, can you tell us about a time when you applied these concepts or whatever, you'll be able to go right to a place in your log and be able to say, well, here's an example back in April of last year that I went through, and kind of go through it that way. So, but it's the other part that I wanted to share is, and you mentioned reflection. but from a continuous learning, continuous improving process is that you do need to do your reflective process. I have one that works for me where I come at it from what went well, what didn't go well, and what will I do differently next time. And what that does is that helps me with the whole aspect of the process and concepts that I'm using. I'm able to go back and take a look and say, okay, I have to make some changes to how I'm mentoring, or with this particular individual, I need to change the process and concepts accordingly. And in doing so, I'm able to then customize my approach as well.
For sure. And that continuance, that reflection, that entering actually helps you strengthen your character and capabilities, your confidence, your understanding of conditions and consequences, so that you have a bit of a preparation checklist that you put together. You get your prevention backpack that you're wearing, saying, I think I'm getting better and better and better at this notion of mentoring. And that's what we're attempting to get across, because in essence, the outcome that we're looking for is your capacity to serve as a mentor and to be able to do mentoring according to the definition that Doug shared with you earlier: two-way trusted. You're continually learning from each other and with each other. These are the kind of things that you need to have to be able to then know how to answer questions, right? How to attend to the evolvement of your mentee. Sometimes mentors just get, well, I'm just going to get you involved in what's happening. No, we take it to another level of evolvement, to evolve the person so that they have something that may lean into transformation or transcendence in terms of transition definitions. But the capacity that you're looking at is the well-being for yourself and the well-being of your mentee. So taking care of yourself, all right, the self-care aspect of them. We'll be talking about this on another video a little bit more on another Wednesday. But there's also the well-living with others. In other words, how am I well-living with you, mentee? Here I am, a mentor, mentee, but also encouraging the mentee about their well-living with others, as I would have to do that outside of, it may not be with my mentor, it might be with other people I'm interacting with. So this capacity that comes from this well-being and well-living, all right, is something that you're attempting to grow and develop, and in a sense is the qualities that you are exhibiting of this extraordinary mentor then heightens, deepens, enriches, improves, focuses, strengthens, right? Character, capabilities, competence, conditions, consequences, continuance, and capacity. These are sort of the outcomes of these qualities that you as a mentor can bring to your mentoring. So that's why we went over what we have to share with you today. Again, we didn't want to go into each of the qualities. We have other videos there. We did want to just go over and say, okay, what's a mentor? What's an extraordinary mentor? What's mentoring? Just highlight the qualities, but also to get into some of these character capabilities, the capacity, ways of looking at serving as a mentor using a mentoring process. As I often say, when you mentor, you mentor. Because a lot of people are confused. They do other things and still call it mentoring. And I sort of do a little shudder dance and I go, hang on, when you mentor, you mentor. If you're going to use another educating approach, you're using another educating approach. Then make sure that you're clear about that, all right, in terms of knowing what will unfold and infold when you mentor, you mentor. So I think we're going to go towards closing. Is that okay, Doug?
Yeah.
All right. So I just, again, just to remind you, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain, whether standard or daylight, is that we have these live sessions. You can send us questions ahead of time. You can put them in on other videos, and we usually go in and take a look at any comments that are being made. You can go to the internationalmentoringcommunity.com contact page, and you can send us your questions in that way. If you know Doug or I, because of a connection, you have our emails, then please use those and get whatever you want to get to us, and we'll make sure that we cover off answers to your questions. And we always enjoy your comments too. So, and remember, if you're here for the first time, subscribe. So, as we always do on these videos, because I'm the one who brings us in, Doug has the pleasure of taking us out. And when I know that he's done, we'll close off and I will say, take care, and we'll close the broadcast. So, Doug?
So the one thing that I wanted to, and we've kind of talked about this already and the significance of it, but the mentoring log is the foundation to continuous improvement. And that's on the part of the mentor, but also on the part of the mentoring process. And so you need to start your log today.
With that, take care.